very quickly, a brief introduction of Kate. Kate was one of our alumni. And Kate, which year did you graduate?
2013.
2013. And after that, I just confirmed with Kate that she went to Indianapolis and worked there then for 5 years, right? And came back 20.
Yeah, I was with the city of Fort Wayne, and then I moved to Indianapolis.
Anyway, I didn't get your history, the whole history after UW straight. But Kate is working for the city of Milwaukee right now with Department of Public Works, and she will present the multimodal transportation system in Milwaukee. And actually, Kate, I don't know if you can see the participant. I think I saw a lot of your classmates here.
Yeah, good.
It's a good reunion. So we're all excited that you're here, and we're excited to learn about your project in Milwaukee. Welcome. Thank you so much, Kate.
Thank you. Thanks, Ivy, for the introduction, and thank you all for joining us today and joining me in this presentation. I'm going to go into full screen. Okay, so as Ivy said, I'm going to stop frequently to check for questions because otherwise it'll be kind of a long time of just me talking, and I don't think I or anyone else really wants that. So there are two options for asking questions. There's the chat function, so if there's something that comes up as I'm talking and you want to ask a question, feel free to type it in the chat. I can't see it right now because I've got I'm sharing my screen, but I will stop and check the chat as well as see if anyone has any questions they want to ask over audio as well. So thanks again to Ivy for that introduction. The title of my presentation is The Future of Our Streets, Multimodal Transportation in Milwaukee. And as Ivy mentioned, I work for the Department of Public Works. I'm an associate transportation planner. And
Anna Koval
is now joining.
So first, I want to talk a little bit about our the multimodal unit that's within the Department of Public Works. So this is the unit that I work in. It was established in the budget year 2017. So those of you who are familiar with the city of Milwaukee may know that we've had a bike ped coordinator for the city for several years, but in 2017, a new unit was established, the multimodal unit. And at the time, it was kind of in name only. The bike ped coordinator was moved into that unit, as well as another person who was moved into another associate transportation planner position. So it stayed like that for a while before our multimodal transportation manager was hired, and then I was hired after him. So our unit consists of our multimodal transportation manager, Mike Amson, the bike ped coordinator, James Hanig, myself, and then Marissa Meyer, another associate transportation planner. All of us are graduates of the Masters of Urban Planning program at SARUP. We also have a full-time engineer who works mostly on our neighborhood traffic management program, as well as 3 transportation operations assistants, which are essentially interns.
Is now exiting.
Our unit is located in the infrastructure services part of DPW. This is headed by the city engineer, who also heads up transportation infrastructure, bridges and buildings, and then we're in transportation operations. So if you take a look at the titles of the units, the other units within transportation operations, traffic, lighting, underground conduit, they're a little bit different than what we do. So we focus on some longer term, bigger picture things, whereas not all our other colleagues do. So it's really a different type of work that we do in DPW. So some of the things that we do are transportation planning and policy, pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure, bicycle parking, shared and new mobility, transportation
Unknown
studies,
participant is now
and
joining.
neighborhood traffic management. So I will cover some of the projects that we have under these different categories. So the first category that I'm going to cover is transportation planning and policy. And this includes our complete streets policy, our pedestrian plan, and our safe routes to school strategic plan. So complete streets, if you're not familiar with what they are, they're essentially streets that are for everyone. So whether you're young or old, you're walking, you're biking, you're taking the bus, or you're driving, a complete street is a street where you feel safe and comfortable on it. Complete streets also mean that choosing different modes is convenient and reliable. So it's a street where people are able to move around in whatever way that they want. And oftentimes we think really solely about the design of those streets, but complete streets really focuses on the procedures and processes that are internal to like the Department of Public Works and how those policies and procedures create the streets that we see. So in October 2018, the city of Milwaukee passed a complete streets policy. It was passed unanimously by Common Council and then signed by Mayor Barrett. We also had really strong community support for complete streets. A lot of different groups supported the policy and ensured that it was something that reflected what the community wanted. So you'll see in this picture behind Mayor Barrett signing the policy, a lot of the community supporters that worked really hard to ensure people around the city were aware of the policy and that the language in the policy reflected what they wanted to see on their streets. So a complete streets policy essentially means that anytime we touch a street, whether it's through a total reconstruction or through something smaller like a repaving project, when we come back, that street should function well for everybody, no matter what their age or ability or what mode they're using. Again, complete streets are streets that are for everybody. So complete streets can look very different. It's very important that they are context sensitive, and that's something that was written into the policy. So here's an image. You can tell it's not a great one because I just took it from Google Street View, but here's Kilbourne Avenue downtown at Cathedral Square Park. So this is kind of, Kilbourne Avenue kind of has it all. It's got a protected bike lane. You can see the streetcar tracks, and over at the left side of the screen, there's a run stop for the hop streetcar. We have high visibility crosswalks. And it's also safer for people driving because this kind of design slows people driving down. So this is a street that really functions well for everybody. But you don't have to have all of those design elements. This is South 5th Street, which was recently reconstructed. You can see in this image, there aren't any bike lanes here, but we do have really wide sidewalks, and those really wide sidewalks not only are great for people walking, but they're also great for the businesses. Businesses and more walkable and bikeable areas tend to have greater profits. So street design can really help achieve other city goals. And then finally, residential streets, they also can really function well and be complete streets. Oftentimes there's less traffic, people are moving slower. In Milwaukee, we're pretty lucky to have sidewalks on both sides of most streets. I can say from living in Indiana, that's not the case in every city. We also have really great tree canopies on a lot of streets. So these types of residential streets are really safe and enjoyable for walking, and then often for biking as well. So again, complete streets can look very different depending on what the context is. And we don't need to have bike lanes and bump outs and all the other bells and whistles to make a street a complete street. So as part of the Complete Streets policy, a Complete Streets Committee was also established through an ordinance. And the Complete Streets Committee is really tasked with overseeing the implementation of the Complete Streets policy. This committee consists of 13 members. A lot of them are department or agency heads within the city of Milwaukee.
Unknown participant
we also
is now
have
joining.
some chairs of different committees that, so we have some elected officials on our committee as well. The committee has met 3 times so far, and we're still kind of establishing a schedule for the committee, but we do expect that the committee will continue to meet 3 times per year. And this committee is chaired by our Commissioner of Public Works. So one of the items that the Complete Streets Committee was tasked with doing is producing an annual report. So this is the cover page of our 2019 Milwaukee Complete Streets Health and Equity Report. It is still in draft form. It's not final yet because we're waiting on final crash data from the state. I also want to give a big thanks to Professor Bob Schneider for putting together the data framework that really helped guide this report. This first year of this Complete Streets annual report is really supposed to be a benchmarking report. So it's pretty robust and gives a lot of explanations about what Complete Streets are and what we're doing to implement Complete Streets. And in future years, we will probably have more just reporting on data. So right now, the data that's reported in here is just initial data. There's not really any comparisons. So we framed the report around health and equity for a couple of reasons. In July 2019, Common Council passed a racial equity resolution. And this resolution directs the city to take action towards racial equity and to transform systems of racism that contribute to poor health. And we know that Complete Streets can really influence health by making it safe, easy, and comfortable for everyone to be physically active and to live in healthy environments. Historically, communities of color have been negatively impacted by planning decisions, which has led to disparities, particularly in health. And while there are a number of factors that need to be addressed in order to work at these disparities, we know that Complete Streets can be a big contributor to repairing these past harms. So one of the things we needed to do was determine geographies to report out our data points in the report. So we're reporting them out citywide, but then we also wanted to look at different concentrated areas. We did a number of analyses of different factors like race, income, disability, language spoken at home, and they all kind of didn't end up being too different from this already established boundary. So the blue areas on the map here are neighborhood revitalization strategy areas and NRSAs. These are established by, or these are areas that are eligible for U.S. Housing and Urban Development Community Development Block Grant funds. And so these are based on income. So it wasn't a huge surprise that a metric just based on income was pretty similar to a lot of the other factors we were looking at. And we determined that it would be best to look at an already established area. So the Complete Streets Health and Equity Report has 4 sections. Changes to internal processes, and like I mentioned, Complete Streets aren't just about design, it's about changing those internal processes that result in the street design that we see. So in the section we talk about
unknown participant is now exiting.
Coordination efforts, project development, and engagement. Complete Streets projects really talks about the physical infrastructure results of those changes to internal policies. So how are these internal processes resulting in Complete Streets? So we report on Complete Streets project delivery, the pedestrian high injury network, which I'll talk about in a little bit with the pedestrian plan, our low stress bikeway network, and green infrastructure. And then our streets today is really looking at the external results of those 2 previous sections. So how is behavior changing based on those internal changes? So we look at work commute mode share, transit user counts, trail user counts, shared mobility counts, safety, so that's some crash data, perceptions based on a survey done by the coalition Safe and Healthy Streets Milwaukee, economic development, and then we're going to be looking at speeding at 20 different locations throughout the city and intersection user counts, so biking and walking at 20 locations throughout the city. We don't have those numbers to report for 2019, but we established a methodology for that. Then finally, we look at changes in long-term health trends, so physical activity, obesity, asthma, coronary heart disease, and high blood pressure. So I'm going to highlight a couple of these things that we have in the report. So with engagement, Safe and Healthy Streets Milwaukee has been working closely with us to lead what are called Safe Passages walks. So these are walks that take place before and after a project is completed. And these walks are really great because it allows us project managers to meet with community residents to learn firsthand what the issues are. And when you're out there walking, you're really able to experience the street. There's nothing different. There's nothing that compares to actually being out, experiencing the street, particularly with residents who live it every day. So this image is from North 27th Street, where we have a traffic safety improvement project planned. This is also a collaboration with the Department of City Development with their Connect the Corridor plan. So that's another example of collaborating with another department within the city. And we really want to make sure we incorporate this type of engagement into our processes. So it's not just our unit that's doing these types of walks. We want to make sure that all units in DPW are engaging with residents in appropriate and meaningful ways prior to project development. So our annual report also includes case studies. I'll talk about two of them here. One is North Holly Road. It was a 4-lane viaduct over Menominee River and some railroad tracks. It really was a place that was seeing a lot of high speeds. You can see that before picture. It's really just a wide open place where people were driving pretty quickly. And residents were really concerned about speeds on this street. The alderman for the area, Alderman Murphy, and our multimodal unit held some traditional public meetings. We also held a walk with the alderman and Safe and Healthy Streets. Alternatives were presented and residents were really involved in the decision making. You can see the after picture. We reduced the lanes to 2 driving lanes, added protected bike lanes in August 2019, and impacts were realized immediately. There's a 45% drop in motor vehicle speeds going over 40 miles per hour. There were minimal impacts to side streets. That was one of the concerns in doing this project, that people would just start driving more on the side streets. And we got lots of positive feedback, lots of emails from residents saying how much they loved it. Another example of a case study in the report is Chase Avenue. I know this picture looks pretty bleak. We used a case study of a street where we thought that some processes could have been improved. And this was a reconstruction project, pretty minimal community engagement. And the community wasn't involved in determining the alternatives. So there was a lot of concerns about loss of parking near the park. Having just a striped bike lane was kind of concerning because there's high speeds on the street. So it's not a bike lane that works for everybody. And there were minimal pedestrian improvements. So we offered some opportunities for change for future projects. So we can ensure that the community is involved and that the design is something that is more satisfactory for lots of people. Okay, so that's the end of my one last thing on complete streets, and then I'll take a pause for questions. So we do have this other project. I apologize for the very pixelated picture there. So we are going to be producing a complete streets handbook. We're really in the early stages of work around this. So the hope is to focus on those internal policies and procedures and really figure out what needs to change in order to produce complete streets consistently And this handbook will focus less on design because there's already a lot of really great design guidance out there. Okay, so I'm going to exit my full screen and see if there are any questions for now. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions yet, so I guess I will continue, and then I'll stop again in a little bit. Okay, so next under planning, we have the pedestrian plan, which was adopted in July 2019. It's the first citywide pedestrian plan. And it's a plan to make walking safer, more enjoyable, and more accessible for everybody. It really aligns with our complete streets policy based on a lot of community feedback, and it involves substantial research and analysis to identify 4 main issues, which I'll talk about in the next slide. And it includes 20 recommendations and over 100 actions. So there were 4 issue areas in the pedestrian plan. So these, the plan identifies these issues and then offers recommendations for each of them. I'll talk a little bit more in detail about safety on the next slide, but accessibility and connectivity addresses things like sidewalk maintenance and the connectivity of the sidewalk network. We do have a pretty well built out sidewalk network here, but there are some gaps in the network. So the recommendations include things like ensuring clear routes on sidewalks in all weather and addressing those gaps in the sidewalk network. Livability and health. Like I mentioned with the Complete Streets report, we know that improving our physical environment can really help people be more physically active and healthy. And some of the recommendations in this report are to encourage placemaking. And some of the initiatives we already have are our decorative crosswalk programs and our decorative bike rack program, and also using streets for programmed events such as Ciclavia. And then maintenance and operations really evaluates if we have the correct funding and capacity to address our needs. And a recommendation from that is using data to prioritize our projects. So like I said, I'm going to talk a little bit more about safety. As I'm sure many of you know, we have a big issue with reckless driving in the city, and it's a really big issue just because of the safety, because of the impacts to people's safety. People don't feel safe getting out and walking or biking. And one thing that we know is that speeding can have a really big impact on fatality rates. So if you're hit by a car going 20 miles per hour, your likelihood of fatality or severe injury is 13%. That jumps to 40% at 30 miles per hour and 73% at 40 miles per hour. So it's really important that we slow down the speed of people driving so that we can create a city where everybody feels safe and comfortable walking and biking and even driving. So one of the things that can help improve safety and reduce speeds is infrastructure improvements. So the pedestrian plan also includes a toolbox of different types of treatments that can be used on streets to help improve safety for people walking and people biking and driving and taking transit. So here is one of the images from that toolbox. Our consultant used a couple different intersections to provide examples. And what's really neat is that they showed high effort improvements. So in this image, you can see that a driveway was shut down, some concrete curb extensions were installed, but they also show low effort improvements, something that we call rapid implementation, which I will talk about later. Then quickly, I'll touch on our Safe Routes to School strategic plan. This is a plan that's wrapping up pretty soon here. Something that's really cool about this is that it's a collaboration between us, DPW taking the lead, but also with our partners at Milwaukee Public Schools and the Wisconsin Bike Fed. Wisconsin Bike Fed has done a lot of great work educating students on safe walking and biking throughout the city. And we've also involved other partners like Milwaukee Police Department and Safe Kids Wisconsin and MCTS. So the strategic plan is framed under the 6 E's. So infrastructure, providing infrastructure that allows people to walk and bicycle safely to and from schools. Education, making sure that everyone knows how to walk, bike, and drive safely. Empowerment, supporting families and school communities to come up with their own programs for increasing walking and biking. Enforcement, enforcing traffic safety laws around schools and targeting risky driver behavior. Encouragement, promoting walking and biking to school, and then evaluation, tracking progress towards achieving goals. All right, so I'll pause again to see if there are any questions on our planning and policy section. Okay, I'm not seeing any, so I will continue on. Okay, so next I'm going to talk about pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure. So connecting to the plan, we have a Safe Routes to School implementation project. We have some bike boulevard projects, and then protected bike lanes and rapid implementation. So before I talk about our specific projects, I'm going to talk about different types of bicyclists. So some of you might be familiar with this research, but there have been some different studies that categorize different types of bicyclists. So there's the strong and fearless. These are people who are okay with riding anywhere, anytime, and really they don't even need like a bike lane to feel comfortable out riding. Then we have, and that's about 7% of people biking. And then we have enthusiastic and confident. This is around 5% of people. So these are people who are probably okay with the type of infrastructure that we have out in Milwaukee right now. So a lot of painted bike lanes, sometimes using trails or those quiet residential streets. And then we have interested but concerned. These are people who want to try biking but don't feel necessarily safe. They might drive to a trail to go biking if they want to do it because they really need that separated infrastructure. And then about 37% of people are either not able or interested. So our work in the multimodal unit really focuses on this interested but concerned group of people. So we want to make sure we're building bike infrastructure for all ages and abilities so that we can increase the number of people biking. So with that in mind, these are some of the projects that we have to focus on that. And of course, that is really only talking about bicyclists. A lot of people walk and need safer accommodations for walking as well. And we've got a couple of those pedestrian focused projects as well. So Safe Routes to School implementation is really the next step of that Safe Routes to School strategic plan. So for this project, 8 schools were selected. There were 8 high-need schools from 27 schools that received travel plans in that strategic plan. This project will place some traffic calming elements around those schools. Construction for the schools is expected in 2021. As you might assume, some of our projects may be getting delayed just based on the pandemic happening right now. So this project in particular, my colleague Marissa Meyer is managing this project, and she's been doing a really great job of engaging with the schools. This is an image from Lincoln Avenue School where students and parents and teachers were involved in actually looking at maps of the schools and choosing the infrastructure that should go around them. They also had a budget sheet so they can make sure that they're staying within the budget that they have. So 4 of the 8 schools have had this initial public meeting 2 were scheduled, and then we all had the Safer at Home order. The schools were shut down. So right now this project is on pause a little bit, but it is a really great project that that all of the schools have really been involved in and have really enjoyed working with Marissa on that. So next, I'm going to talk about our bike boulevard projects. So bike boulevards, if you're not familiar with them, they are usually local streets with lower speeds and volumes of car traffic, where we really prioritize the safety and comfort of people biking, walking, and playing. They use pavement markings, signs, and traffic calming treatments. They reduce motor vehicle speeds, creating quieter and calmer streets. They improve safety for all users, but especially people biking and walking. They reduce the number and severity of crashes. And in order to do all this, they use different traffic calming features, so things like speed humps, traffic circles, bump outs, traffic diverters, so that people driving can't go all the way through, and signs. So Fratney and Wright Bike Boulevards are the city's first bike boulevard projects. They will run on Fratney Street from Meineke to Keefe Avenue, and then on Wright Street from Palmer Street to the Oakleaf Trail at Gordon Park. So this construction is expected to be this summer, so pretty exciting that we will have our first bike boulevards coming up soon. And then we have another bike boulevard project, Washington and Scott. This project is just in its very early stages right now. So Washington Street, it will go from the KK River Trail to 20th Street, and then it will continue on Scott Street from 20th to Layton Boulevard. So this anticipated construction is summer of 2021, but like I said, we're in the very early stages of this right now. We are also doing a lot of protected bike lanes. So as I stated with the different types of bicyclists, we're really trying to focus on creating infrastructure for those people who are interested in but concerned. So people who need a little bit more protection when they're out biking. We know that traditional painted bike lanes don't feel safe enough for lots of people, particularly people with kids who want to go biking with their kids, or on streets where there are higher volumes and speeds. And protected bike lanes can also really improve comfort for pedestrians because they provide further separation from moving cars, and they help reduce speeds. So Locust and North were our first protected bike lanes. Both of them are over the Milwaukee River. So we saw immediate benefits from installing these protected bike lane. Bicycling more than doubled on both streets. There were 50 to 70% reductions in cars speeding over 40 miles per hour. And there was a slight increase in motor vehicle traffic, even though we decreased the number of driving lanes. So these protected bike lanes were initially separated by just those posts, what we call flexible delineators. But we had some issues both with people driving, hitting them, but then also because they were on a bridge deck, we couldn't drill into it. So they were put on with the adhesive, which maybe wasn't the strongest. So last summer, we installed concrete barriers on either end of the protected bike lanes, and that has really improved both just the safety of people using them, but then also the flexible delineators that are in between the concrete barriers have been staying up better. Holly, I discussed already, and then Kilbourne, phase 1 of this from Water to Jackson was installed as part of the streetcar project. Phase 2 from 6 to Water was installed as part of a high impact paving project last year. This is a parking protected bike lane. So that means that parked cars provide the protection. We do have some flexible delineators, especially at the corners. But overall, it's the cars providing the barrier. So parking compliance has overall been pretty good. We do see some issues when there's higher parking demand. Some people will double park. But that's usually only when there is bigger events happening downtown, and maybe some people who aren't familiar with it are coming to park downtown. And then finally, in infrastructure, rapid implementation projects, which I mentioned when I was talking about the pedestrian plan. So rapid implementation was recommended by our pedestrian plan. There are lots of other cities that are doing it. This is an image from Jersey City. It's a great way to test out ideas because things can easily be moved or removed. You can also make things more permanent when funding is available and when the concept has been proven. So this image shows a bump out that was created by using paint and flexible delineators. It also has high visibility crosswalks. And we will be doing something very similar to this on 2 streets this summer. So South 13th from Oklahoma to Harrison, and then North 27th from Wells to State. So different intersections will be receiving treatment similar to this. In both of these projects, we have a partner, a business improvement district that we're working with to help engage the community, and then also to help with maintenance of it. So Creasel Corridor for the 13th Street project, and then Northwest Side Partners for the 27th Street project. Okay, so my last section is shared and new mobility. So I'm going to pause for a second and see if anybody has any questions in the chat box. Okay, so I've got a question from Dan Adams. What types of public outreach and community input opportunities will be involved in the creation of the Washington Scott Bike Boulevard project? Great question. So my colleague James Hannig is managing this project. We know that community outreach is going to be very important for this project, particularly outreach that's relevant to the community. It is in a very high Spanish-speaking population area, so we want to make sure that we're using trusted partners. So we are working with a consultant to work on the community engagement aspect of the project, and 16th Street Community Health Centers is going to be providing public outreach. They're partnering with our consultant to work on that. So we know that having a trusted partner is going to help us do the outreach that is necessary for that project. Okay, and Bart asked, could you talk about any particular ADA parameters or requirements within Milwaukee's Complete Streets efforts, particularly on-street ADA parking or loading areas? Are they incorporated into planning and implementation efforts? And do improvements like improved sidewalk ramps provide or present an opportunity for other improvements? Good question, Bart. So our policy doesn't specifically direct us doesn't specifically say anything about ADA, but it is expected that we follow it. With all of our projects. So every time that we do a project, we have to ensure that if we can, we are ADA ramps to the current requirements. So that's expected for every project. And then, yeah, you're right. Improved sidewalk ramps can provide opportunities for other improvements. In some cases, we don't have sufficient room to have the type of ADA ramps that we want to have. So creating a bump out will really provide the best improvements for ADA. So that improves safety more, makes it easier for people to cross the street. And so there's a lot of great opportunity with ADA improvements. Okay, Stephanie asks, has the city of Milwaukee considered a Vision Zero-ish initiative? I'll just answer this quickly because I've got a couple more slides left and I want to make sure we get through everything. So there was a reckless driving task force that was established that provided a whole number of recommendations, and they have done some research on Vision Zero because it does seem to be a good way for us to accomplish some of the goals that the Reckless Driving Task Force has. So it is being considered, but it has not been established yet. Jonathan asks, what's the process for other community business groups to do a rapid implementation project? That I would suggest reaching out to my colleague Marissa. She is the one managing that project. I believe there needs to be an agreement for maintenance, but she would be able to answer that better. And my contact info will be on the last slide, so you can reach out to me if you don't have her contact info. And Andrew Thomas Schmitz asks, are there any direct responses to coronavirus being considered? Open streets, temporary bike lanes, disabling of pedestrian crossing buttons, etc. We are having conversations about these different strategies. It's not a quick fix. We are aware of some of the concerns with overcrowding on the trails, and we are actively working with partners to address that. And Robin Palm suggested that Lincoln Memorial and Estabrook be shut down. Thank you. And those are also county streets. Those are managed by the county. So you might want to reach out to county supervisors as well. John December says, you mentioned bicycle parking as part of your studies. What about automobile parking and its management as examined by empirical research such as Donald Shoup's book, Parking in the City? I'm concerned that walkable streets might be difficult if cars are favored to the degree they are now. We have not had the opportunity to do parking studies. However, we have discussed with our parking services in DPW, and they are interested also in looking more into different types of parking management. So it is something that we are interested in learning more about. Okay, so there's a couple more questions. I'm going to finish up my presentation and then I'll come back to these questions, starting with Frank's, because I have just a couple more slides. Okay, so I'll finish this up and then we can continue on with our questions. All right, so this last section is on shared and new mobility. So I'm going to talk about our adaptive bike share pilot, bike share expansion project, and then the 2019 dockless scooter pilot study. So just a little quick overview. Bubbler Bikes is a nonprofit that operates our bike share system, and the city of Milwaukee is involved with them because we often pursue federal grants and purchase and install and bikes. I think is somebody, make sure you mute yourself.
Unknown participant is now exiting.
Okay. So Bubbler Bikes also operates its system outside of the city of Milwaukee, so in suburbs like Shorewood, West Allis, and Wauwatosa. So last year from August through December, we, along with Bubbler Bikes, ran an adaptive bike share pilot study. So this was really seeking to improve access to bike share by providing a variety of bicycles for a wider range of abilities. So the city purchased 17 adaptive bikes, and it was really important to the advocates who were in the disability rights community that this adaptive bike share was really part of the regular bike share system. So there's a lot of cities that are doing adaptive bike share, but it functions more like a bike rental program. So Bubbler worked to ensure that these bikes could be integrate into their docks so that you could check out a bike and return it just like any other bike share bike. So there were 201 checkouts and 133 trips. So that means somebody actually checked out the bike, rode it around for a while, and then brought it either back to the same station or to another station. So evaluation of this pilot is happening right now. The city and Bubbler are really interested in continuing it. There were some issues that arose throughout the pilot, but they were really trying to address some of those issues and make sure that we can continue to provide bike share that's accessible to everybody. We also have a bike share expansion project. So this is one of those federal grants that we received to expand the system to purchase and install new stations. So we received a congestion mitigation and air quality improvement grant for this. So we will be installing 26 new stations. You can see the purple dots on this map is where the stations are expected to be installed. There's 30 purple dots on this map. So 4 of them are alternatives, and not all of these will be installed. Installation is expected in late 2020 and early 2021. And then finally, last thing I'm going to talk about is our 2019 dockless scooter pilot study. So the goals of this study were to increase transportation options, expand access to transit, and evaluate impact to the public right-of-way. We had 3 operators in the pilot study. So Lime was the first operator. They started July 23rd and ended November 30th. Spin started August 13th, ended November 15th, and Bird started August 14th and ended November 13th or 30th. All of the operators, so we were authorized to conduct the study through December 31st, but all of the operators decided to voluntarily pull their scooters earlier, just based on weather that we experienced in October and November. There were a total of 1,300 scooters allowed at their peak of the program. I don't think that we ever had that many on the streets at one time, but that's how many were allowed. I'll cover a couple of key takeaways from the pilot study. So we had 350,130 total rides throughout the duration of the pilot study, an average of 2,762 rides per day. And the rides per vehicle per day was 3.6. That metric is an industry metric that's used to determine if there's additional market for, or if the market could hold additional scooters. 3 to 3.5 is usually seen as a pretty good metric. And as you may guess, these numbers, the average rides per day, or the rides per day, and then rides per vehicle per day really varied based on weather and the time of year. So earlier we had a lot more rides happening, and then when it got colder, those rides dropped, as well as the rides per vehicle per day. So we had divided the city up into 3 different zones for the pilot study, and there were different requirements for distribution for each of these zones. Most of the rides happened in zone 1, and they were further concentrated east of the river around Marquette and then in Walker's Point. We did have a lot of concerns about coming in from residents about people riding on the sidewalk. So we conducted, I believe, 32 hour-long counts at 18 intersections throughout zone 1, and we observed 83% of riders riding in the street. It's not perfect, but it is pretty good evidence that most people are riding in the street. We did a public survey, and we received over 7,600 responses. 57% of those people had never ridden a scooter. One of the questions we asked is, what is your most frequent reason for riding a scooter? The most frequent reason is for fun or recreation. I think that was about 27%, but that means the rest of the people most people are riding for transportation related reasons. And then 73% of people who took this survey support allowing scooters, either as our pilot study was regulating them or with some changes to the pilot study. So just a quick update on our dockless scooter pilot study. We have evaluated the program. We have a draft report and a draft recommendation for moving forward, but we were not able to have some key meetings prior to working from home. So, and scooters are not people's highest priority right now. So it's kind of our recommendation and report are kind of on pause right now. Okay, so there's my contact information. So if there's anything that you want to know that we aren't able to address in the question time, then feel free to reach out to me and I can connect you with some of my colleagues if that's appropriate. Okay, so back to questions. Okay, going back up to Frank's. How does one suggest a project study area for your unit? I suggest a project study area on North Avenue between Humboldt and Teutonia. This area experiences extreme motor vehicle congestion during peak hours, contributes to ignoring bike lane markers and other
Howard
traffic.
Snyder.
Sorry, did somebody say something?
Is now exiting.
Oh. Okay, so Frank, I'd say you can email me, or if you know any of my colleagues, you can email us and we can talk you through that. Okay, Diane is asking, in general, how expensive are bike boulevards? Frattney and Wright, for example. I don't have the budget numbers in front of me, but if you want to follow up with an email, I can get back to you on that. Okay, Caleb asks, on high traffic streets such as Fond du Lac, how viable is it to swap the bike and parking lanes to improve safety for people willing to bike on these streets? Based solely on empirical evidence, auto operators appear to use bike lanes adjacent to traffic lanes in many parts of the city as not just passing lanes, but additional traffic lanes. Yeah, that's a good question. So what Caleb is asking about is protected bike lanes. So like the example on Kilbourne, having a parking protected bike lane. I can't think of the geometry of Fond du Lac off the top of my head, but obviously we need to make sure that there is enough room for all of those different elements to fit. So when we have a parking protected bike lane, we need usually about 6 feet for the bike lane, and then we need an additional 3 feet for a buffer between the bike lane and parked cars. So sometimes that means reducing the width of travel lanes, which sometimes is possible, or sometimes we're able to take out a travel lane. So it all really depends on what the motor vehicle volume is on the street and what the width of the street is. So all those different elements play into whether or not we're able to put a protected bike lane on a street. Jason asks, how is Milwaukee regulating and where are you allowing the use of electric assist scooters, skateboards, and bicycles? So when our dockless scooter pilot study was authored, or when we passed some legislation related to that, our Common Council also made it illegal to ride on an electric scooter on the sidewalk. So if you're riding a dockless scooter or an electric scooter, you should be riding in the street like a bicycle. Bicycles, if you're over the age of 10 in the city of Milwaukee, you are supposed to be riding in the street. That's in our city code. And skateboards, I don't know off the top of my head, I can't remember what regulates skateboards. Okay, Sarah asks, to what degree have green infrastructure alternatives been studied and or incorporated into multi-mobility strategies, vegetative barriers, etc.? Seems like a great opportunity to reduce impervious services, restore ecosystem services, beautify our streets, and improve stormwater management. Yeah, I agree. I think it's all kind of dependent on the project, you know, what funding we have for the project, what the budget is, and basically what we're able to do with what we have, what the area that we have for the project. But our Complete Streets policy does mention green infrastructure, so it is something that we would like to incorporate more when it's possible. Okay, Dustin asks, have any pre and post construction speed studies, traffic counts, volumes associated with street projects to better understand the impacts of the projects? Yeah, so with a couple of the projects I did mention, like Locust and North protected bike lanes, then Holly Road, I did mention some of the changes we saw after we implemented some changes. So there are some streets that we are doing that for. We are working to incorporate more pre and post studies in more of our projects. So there's just a limited number of projects that our unit does, but so that involves us ensuring that other units are doing those pre and post studies too. But it is something that we want to make sure we're doing so that we can really have that proof that the work that we're doing is making a big difference. Oh, and thank you, Bob, for sharing that. That link for Dustin.
And this is Ivy. And I don't want to interrupt the discussion. It's awesome discussion. I just want to take a group photo together. This is a awesome participants before people started to leave. So this is my information here. I hope like everybody is okay that we take a group photo. And the first time do it, I don't know how exactly. If you can turn on your camera, that's awesome. Please turn your camera on. And I guess, Kate, you have to stop sharing your file,
okay.
Actually.
Yes, I will do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Did that work?
Yeah. I only see four.
I'll talk, but I don't want to be in the photo. Because we're on Teams, we're only going to get 4 people on the screen. So whoever talks next will be the 4th person. I'm getting out of here.
I don't know how then. Like I see a group photo of like 40, 50 people there. I don't know how they do that.
I haven't showered today. I'm quarantined. This is not good. I'm in my pajamas.
I think they do it on Zoom. That's one of the advantages of Zoom over Teams.
Oh my God. Yeah. Okay. Then I would just take a photo. I would just have a screenshot of this one, and still it shows
multiple
like
people are now exiting.
It shows like 94, 91 participants. Okay. I'm sorry, Kate. Let's coming back to the discussion.
Okay. Well, it's a good break for my voice.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so Jay asks, how would you recommend young planners get their foot in the door to work in transportation planning? That's a really great question.
Fonseca
is now exiting.
I would suggest, I'm not sure if you're in Milwaukee, but if you are, you can reach out to our unit.
Unknown participant is now exiting.
We've had lots of people, or we've had plenty of students reach out to us who are interested in the work we do, and we're always happy to sit down with people and talk about the work we do and opportunities for involvement. You can also get involved in local advocacy groups. So the Bike Fed's a great start here in Milwaukee, Milwaukee Safe and Healthy Streets. I recommend, reaching out to your local planners and sitting down with them and trying to get an internship with your local planning department as well. All right, Andrew, thank you for the compliment. Oh yeah, looking forward to more great improvements coming for North 35th Street near Capitol Drive in the future with MMSD infrastructure work and Northwest Side CDC community engagement. Yes, thank you, Andrew. We are also looking forward to that, and thank you to Northwest Side CDC for doing all the great community engagement work you do. We couldn't do the work that we do without great partners like Northwest Side CDC, Milwaukee Safe and Healthy Streets, the Bike Fed, 16th Street, Layton Boulevard, West Neighbors, so many great organizations out there that help us get the word out about our projects and partner with us. So I see some conversation replying to Dustin. Thank you, James, for providing some more information. Robin, okay. Okay, thank you, Robin, for clarifying. Jason meant e-bikes, skateboards, and e-scooters on sidewalks, multi-use paths, bike lanes, and bike paths. All of those electric devices can be used in bike lanes. So bike paths or shared use paths are a little bit different because in Milwaukee, at least, we have 3 different jurisdictions that own the different trails in the city. So the city owns some, the county owns the majority of them. So the Oak Leaf Trail is managed by the county. And then the state owns the Hank Aaron State Trail, as well as the trails that go through Lakeshore State Park. So the city and the county allow all of those on their paths and trails. The state, however, you are not supposed to use e-bikes or e-scooters on state trails. So that'd be the Hank Aaron State Trail and in Lakeshore State Park. People obviously still do, but it is not technically allowed there. Okay, and then other comments about not being able to take a group photo, unfortunately. Okay, what are the basic principles of bus stop setup on both sides of Milwaukee streets, such as intervals, integration with the surrounding landscape, etc.? Great question. I don't know for sure because those are mostly planned by MCTS. So I know that they do. I'm sorry, I'm trailing off here. Yeah, I'm not sure what their processes are for installing bus stops. I do know if you haven't already checked out MCTS Next, their plan for improving service and stops, then I would recommend looking at that. One of the things they're trying to do is reduce the number of stops. We do have a lot of bus stops right now. Sometimes the bus will stop every block, but it's possible that they could stop less frequently to improve service. So that is one thing I would recommend checking out their MCTS Next plan, and then reaching out to any planners at MCTS if you have questions about that. Okay, I think that's the end of the questions, unless anyone wants to type in one final one. I know my voice is getting ready for a rest, so thank you all for joining me, and thanks for doing this in a different way. Nancy added a comment about e-bikes, which I think is a good thing. I'm not gonna so she says the discussion about e-bikes being banned from state trails suggests need for a change of policy, maybe a bike version of a handicap sticker on cars. Some people use e-bikes because they have physical limitations that prevent them from using a standard bike, right? It seems wrong to ban these from state trails. Yes, e-bikes are becoming more and more popular. And people are using them for a wide variety of reasons. They're allowing more people who didn't physically feel able to bike before, they're allowing them to bike. So yeah, I agree. Bikes, as e-bikes gain popularity, it's definitely something that I think the state should look at in depth. All right. I don't know if there's any other questions, and I don't know, Ivy, if you want to close up the meeting or how we want to end this.
This is awesome. And you at some point showed your contact information, and I'm sorry that I asked you to turn off your.
Will share it again just so people have it. One more time.
So that everybody has your contact information and they can go ahead and look at the city's awesome work. And if they have questions and if they have concerns, they want to reach out. You. They have your contact information.
Yep, and I can forward it on if it's another colleague of mine that is better suited to answer. Yeah, thank you all. Thank you, Ivy.
Before everyone
thank you so much, Kate.
Yes, this is Nancy Frank again. Thank you so much, Kate. And I just am breaking in here with my hat as the APA Wisconsin Professional Development Officer. We are recording this, as you should have seen if you're online. If you're on the phone, I'm not sure whether you knew it, but you know it now. And we will be posting the recording I think on the SERAP website and probably on the APA Wisconsin website too, come to think of it. And then your colleagues can actually watch it if they weren't able to make it today. And we will be requesting CM credits for the recording as well. So I hope that doesn't reduce our live participation at future events like this, but I wanted to let everybody know. Thanks so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Unknown participant is now exiting.
Dan.
Is now exiting. Unknown participant is now exiting. Is now exiting.